We are studying Torah. It's always good to study Torah. I didn't give you a book, I apologize. Either you have to share with him or you have to walk all the way to that side to get a book. Alright, I'll try to stimulate you with auditory stimulation. Anyway, we are learning the Chatzar Yosef. We're in chapter 13, section 4, the last section of this chapter. Short section, but a famous section. I'm sure many of you have heard in one place or another. And we're going to do some commentary, ask some good questions as we usually do, and B'ezrat Hashem reveal some depths that this Gemara in Masechet Gittin has to offer with your permission. The Gemara says, page 199. He ran away, now I have to repeat him.
I put my bookmark on the spot where I was going to give the book to Rabbi Kiyotai.
The Gemara says, Ula said, I myself saw that place. What place is he talking about? It's the place that we have been talking about this entire chapter, chapter 13. The place is called Tur Malka, a place in Israel. Tur Malka is Aramaic for the mountain of the king, King's Mountain. It was a huge mountainous place, and one big mountain, I assume, with a large population of people. Several sub-cities all over that mountain. Each city had different talents and special qualities, as we learned about in the previous sections of this chapter. But they were all destroyed by the Romans shortly after the destruction of the Second Temple, brutally in a massacre-like fashion. Unfortunately, Ula was one of the Chachamim. He's testifying now in this Gemara. He says, I myself saw that place, Tur Malka, and it could not even hold 600,000 reeds. A reed. It's a thin thing, a very thin, doesn't take a lot of space. He says that place couldn't really even hold up 600,000 reeds. Now, why is he saying this? Why is it such a big deal? Because in the previous section of the Gemara told us about the sheer immense population of people that lived there. There were very hyperbolic, exaggerated numbers, as we concluded. Nevertheless, the idea was there was a lot of people, more than should have been there. In the millions. I mean, the actual words of the Gemara was over there was 600,000 cities, when each city had 600,000 people, but 3 of them had 1.2 million people. Large numbers, but we accept that it was a lot of people, all right? But Ula says, Ula, of course, he's an Amorah. He lived later after the destruction of occurred there. So he's testifying that this place, you hear? Ula says, the Amorah. He says, I saw that place. I saw Tur Malka in his lifetime, later on after it was destroyed. And he says that place couldn't even hold 600,000 reeds, let alone people, let alone cities. How do you explain it?
They always say when the people lived there.
Oh, don't give it away. So the Gemara says, a certain Tzeduki. What's a Tzeduki? Who knows? Right? What were they famous for? In English, they call them Sadducees. It's basically a person from the time of the Tanaim, the first reform movement in Judaism, where they denied the oral Torah and only went by what was written. The written Torah became very corrupt, similar to the Karaites, although they came before the Karaites. The original, what they did was they always tried to sabotage the real halachic, rabbinic line of Judaism authorities. So, and they would always ask these gotcha questions. So Tzeduki asked Rabbi Chanina, who was a tzaddik, you surely lie, you're a liar, with your exorbitant exaggerations of the population in Tur Malka. It's impossible. Right? Rabbi Chanina said to him, about the land of Eretz Yisrael, it's written the following thing. Next page. It says in Jeremiah 3:19, land of the Gazelle, Eretz Tzvi. Tzvi is a deer-like animal, which we're going to translate as gazelle, which is more, not only that, but economically, environmentally, it's more, what am I looking for? It's more common in that area of the Middle East than actual deer.
Yeah.
Gazelles. Okay, that's why we're going to go with gazelle. Just as this gazelle, its skin cannot hold its flesh, So too, with regard to the land of Israel, at the time when it is settled by the people, it expands.
Just like the Beit HaMikdash.
And at the time when it is not settled, it shrinks. That was Rabbi Chanina's answer to the Tzadduki, and that's what will explain Ulah's thing as well. Let's see, Rashi explains. You're a liar. The Tzadduki said you're a liar. When you say that there are 600,000 cities in Turmaka, you're lying, since the land cannot even hold 600,000 reeds, as Ulah said. Next Rashi, its skin cannot hold its flesh, the gazelle. What does it mean? Once the skin of a gazelle is removed after it's dead, after it dies, you skin the animal, the skin shrinks, the hide shrinks, and one cannot completely cover up the flesh of the entire animal with it again.
Is that every animal? Yeah, pretty much.
I guess it's more exaggerated when it comes to the gazelle.
The skin dries up, that's it.
Right, but the gazelle, I guess you see it more.
It's just an example. It's an example.
No, but it's out of all the animals, the Gemara chose that animal as an example.
It's an allegory. It's like mashal.
I understand, but would you say the skin of a gazelle shrinks more intensely than, let's say, a cow?
I would not know. I would not know, but we can.
The Gemara seems to know.
Later, yeah.
Okay, this is a famous Gemara, Eretz Tzvi, that the land of Israel expands when we're there, when it's
And also,
housing
like
its
said,
children.
Tzvi is the animal that is inside Israel. That's why they brought that instead of a deer or some other animal that doesn't exist there.
I mean, common language Tzvi would be used as a deer.
Yeah.
That word is a deer. But again, this is the same family of animal, we understand. Sharach, it's a questions in our Gemara. It says like this: what is the nature of the comparison of the land of Israel to a gazelle? Why did our Gemara feel compelled to compare the land of Israel to a gazelle? What meanings does the word tzvi, tzadi bet yud, gazelle hold? And how do those meanings connect to the land? Did the land actually expand and contract physically? Or is there an alternative meaning? Are we talking metaphorically? Are we talking physical miracles? What are we saying here? On a technical note, the verse in Jeremiah 3:19 does not exactly read land of the gazelle. See, I did look up the verse, as any proper student should do. Rather, there are more words between the word land and the word gazelle in that verse. The phrase in the verse actually reads the following way. I brought you the Hebrew. It says, Eretz Chemda Nahalat Tzvi. Translation, it's a land of desire, desirable land, inheritance of the gazelle. If I was to give it a very crude, direct translation, that's how I would translate it. Right? If the whole verse, I brought the whole verse on the bottom, look at the whole verse, note number 3. The entire verse reads, and I said, I believe this is God speaking, or maybe it's Jeremiah speaking, how may I place you among the other children? This is God speaking.
God speaks.
So I gave you the land of desire, inheritance of the gazelle, amongst the multitude of nations. And I said, call me Father, and do not turn away from behind me. So it's God speaking. That's the whole verse, Jeremiah 3:19. Why does our Gemara ignore those two words that are in between the word land and gazelle in the verse, which are the words desire and inheritance, as we said, in between? Why does our Gemara just sort of omit those words? Technical question. Let's do some commentary. Short commentaries. Ben Yehoyada says the following. Hashem made the land of Israel function in this miraculous way, expanding when the Jews settle it and contracting when they do not. This served to emphasize the land's true matching pair, that the land's true people that belong there, perfect timing, is the nation of Israel, so that others should not claim that the Israelites are thieves who stole the land from the Canaanites. What do they say now? Imperialists, all these colonialists. Yeah, sure.
White.
Yeah. The flesh of the gazelle is not the Jewish nation. I'm sorry, the flesh of the gazelle is the Jewish nation in this metaphor. And the hide, the skin of the gazelle, is the land. And just like the hide is no longer able to completely cover the flesh of the gazelle after it has been skinned, so too the land of Israel is not able to hold the nation after they have been removed from it.
Mm-hmm.
So after the Jews leave, the land shrinks, so to speak, in its quality.
And does the land shrink, or is that the default state of the land, and it just expands when the Jews are there?
I guess both. That is the quality of the land.
I think what it's talking about is when the Jews do not populate the land, it is no longer green, it's no longer flowing with milk.
It's not functioning well.
It's not functioning well.
Which we did. It was well documented. It's well historically, very well documented.
You had what's his name, Samuel.
No, it was Mark Twain.
That's his other name is Samuel, whatever. Okay, and he said that
right. Mark Twain, famous writer, when he visited Israel before the country was established, it was mostly lived by Arabs who lived over there, who today will call themselves Palestinians. Made up term.
Nomads, basically at the time.
Nomads, sure. There was nothing there. There was nothing flourishing, nothing special to see, no grass. Now the Jews came and they made it a major power in Europe.
No, it's not only that; it's completely green.
Of course, it's
flourishing,
fertile, flourishing, beautiful, spiritual. Now again, I don't want to get into the politics here, but Jews didn't, Tel Aviv, some places are not so great either. But you understand what I'm saying? Okay. Next commentary, Iyun Yaakov. Our Gemara relates to what is spoken about in Devarim 12:20. The Torah says the following: when Hashem, your God, will widen your borders. As Moshe tells the people before he died, he gave them a whole speech. He told them, Hashem will eventually widen your borders. And it also says in Shoftim, the book of Judges 18:10, it says, and the land is of wide hands, because God has given it into your hands, meaning that the land is in the hands of the Jewish nation, and they are dwelling within it, and when they are dwelling within it, the land widens. The reason for this is because when the Jewish nation settles in the land, a certain extent of the Shekhinah, of Hashem's presence, dwells there as well, allowing for the miraculous widening of the borders of the land. That's how Iyun Yaakov explains. The Maharal now says, the word tzvi, gazelle, or deer, has another meaning that connotes a certain splendor or glory. Look at note number 1 on the bottom. This is a verse in Samuel, Shmuel Bet 119. It says, Hatzvi, the glory, O Israel, lies slain on your altars. How the mighty have fallen. So in that verse, the word Hatzvi means the glorious thing. Ben Yahu also brings a novel exposition of the verse over there, of the word tzvi. Okay, look, there's some more sources over there to look into that word. Back in the Maharal, it refers to something that's not physical at all. That word tzvi refers to something not physical, but of an otherworldly quality. This quality of the land activates when it is settled by Israel, causing a kind of widening that is beyond the physical. The Gemara in Ketubot 112 states, similarly, that the land is called land of Tzvi, Eretz Tzvi, because just as the gazelle treads speedily, a gazelle is swift on his legs, right? So too the fruits of the land ripen quickly. This is also connected to the same supernatural quality, since natural things are bound by time, but supernatural things are not. They're above that. They ripen quickly, as the Gemara says there. Also, a gazelle is light on its feet and swift of movement, resembling other light and swift moving things such as air and the heavens, which are in that way more spiritual in character than its opposite, which is the dense and physically saturated ground. So too, the land of Israel is more associated with spirituality than physicality. When the gazelle is alive, its skin is able to cover all its flesh. Why? Because the flesh has the life energy of the gazelle within it. The skin is still alive. It's getting nourishment from the blood, from the circulation. And it keeps keeping the physicality down to a minimum. But when the animal dies and it is skinned, the flesh loses its source of life. It's disconnected from the source of life and becomes an exclusively concentrated physical mass. Once it's dead, it's more physical, right? Which causes the skin to lose its supernatural ability to cover the entire flesh. When its inhabitants are the children of Israel, the land is vitalized with the holy life energy.
I think somebody's trying to walk in. Somebody let me go.
And holiness is not bound by physical limits. But when they are gone, so is the life of the land. And so the land returns to its fully physical state, which is the shrunken state of the land that Ula and our Gemara is talking about. Remember, he saw Tur Malkah after the people were massacred from there. There was no more life, Jewish lives, supporting the widening of the land. That's why he saw it so shrunken. And he said that even 600,000 reeds wouldn't fit there. The way of the Chachamim is to speak about the core essence of matters. Whenever they're talking about something, they always talk about the core of it. So you have to really study what they mean. And not the superficial technicalities. Look at note number 2 on the bottom. The Maharal brings the following example. It's taught in the Gemara Masechet Nedarim 30b that if somebody made a neder, a vow, halachic binding vow, not to derive benefit from the circumcised, right? That was actually, if you're doing the daily Mishnah, this was I think yesterday's Mishnah. Amazing how it just fell together like that. This was yesterday's Mishnah. 6 years of Mishnayot if you're doing daily Mishnah, and it fell exactly when we're doing it. So anyway, the Gemara says if somebody made a neder that I am no longer having any benefit from the circumcised. What does that mean? Does he mean, the laws of nedarim, of vows, is that we go by what the person meant really in his mind. So if people say things a certain way, we don't take it literally, we take it for how it's usually, what's the usual vernacular, what he's referring to. So when he says the circumcised, he probably just means the Jews. Right? So that's what it says over here. He is not allowed to benefit even from Jews who are uncircumcised. Meaning, if there's a Jew who is not circumcised, what's a case like that? If a Jew is born, baby boy, and his 2 brothers before him, when they circumcised them, lo aleinu, the kid passed away. They weren't able to take it well. So now there's a halakha that if the 3rd boy is born, you don't circumcise him at risk, because there's a risk that he might die as well. So you don't circumcise him. So he's a Jew who lives his whole life uncircumcised. Doesn't mean he's a bad guy. He's just a circumstance like that.
To his life, though.
What do you mean what happens to his life? He lives his life the best he can.
He's married, everything is the same.
Yeah. He's not to get married. So now look at this. When this guy made a neder that he's not going to benefit from anybody from the circumcised, this Jew who was not circumcised because of the case we said, because he wasn't able to because his brothers died before him, is he included in that neder? In other words, Reuven made a neder that he's not getting any benefit from circumcised. Shimon, unfortunately, cannot get circumcised. The Jewish guy, like we said, he couldn't get circumcised. So now, is Reuven allowed to benefit from Shimon because of the neder that he made? Yes or no? Shimon is not circumcised. Can he benefit from him?
Technically, yes, I guess.
Technically, yes, but actually, we said halakha is no. Yeah, because when he said circumcised, he meant Jews.
Yes.
He meant Jews.
Absolutely.
Even if he's uncircumcised.
Absolutely.
Okay? So now, what if there's a goy who is circumcised? Arabs, or if a goy was born circumcised. Could happen. That's what Yom Tov brings it down. Well, can this guy make a neder? Can he get benefit from that goy?
Yes.
Yes. Why? Because again, when he said circumcised, he meant Jews, which means non-Jews are allowed.
Would vernacular not work because most non-Jews right now are not are circumcised?
How are most non-Jews circumcised now? Are you? Is that?
It's a regular
But
practice.
most?
Yeah.
Really? I don't know.
They go up and down. First they do circumcise, then they start yelling, no more circumcisions. Then they doctors say, no, it's good for you. They do it again. But
I don't know. But the halakha, at the end of the day, we're saying that when a person says mahul, the word is mahul, circumcised, especially in that Hebrew language, it means Jews.
Well, technically Muslims, when they're circumcised, they do it for the same reasons we do.
Sure, but they do it much later. But again, look at the Gemara over
They
there.
get circumcised.
Okay, fine, but the point is we're saying that it's all about what you mean when in the laws of Midarim, and it goes by what you meant with the words you said in your mind, even though it doesn't literally fit with what you literally said.
I agree with you.
Okay? So now, further, if one made a neder, says the Gemara over there, not to derive benefit from the uncircumcised, from the arelim, the word arel means uncircumcised. Let's say he said, from the arelim, no benefit. Now he's allowed to benefit even from Jews who are uncircumcised, because when he says uncircumcised, he meant, again, goyim. And he's not allowed to benefit even from non-Jews, Gentiles, who are circumcised. Again, he's just using those terms to refer to Jews and non-Jews. And that's what we go by. In other words, the term circumcised is intrinsically representative of Jews, while the term uncircumcised is intrinsically representative of Gentiles, despite whatever the technicality really may be.
You just said that he's allowed to benefit from uncircumcised Jews. How is that possible? Because he really meant he is going to use benefit only from uncircumcised.
No, he said that he will not take any benefit from someone who is, not from someone. From the word means, the word he uses is arelim, arel.
Yeah.
That word, again, the Hebrew fits much better. In English, it's all technicalities because the word circumcised or uncircumcised doesn't have any intrinsic meaning. Yeah. But in Hebrew, mahul means circumcised. Arel means someone who has a foreskin, uncircumcised. Those terms are much more, have a deeper essence than their physical meaning.
Understood.
There's a spiritual reality being spoken about here. And that's what the Maharal is trying to refer to when he says, when Chachamim, when they say words that talk about the essence of things.
Correct. So,
and this is an example.
Arelim, if he says Arelim, and you said that he's allowed to benefit from an uncircumcised Jew. How's that?
Because when he said Arelim, he meant Goyim.
He's an uncircumcised Jew.
When he said Arelim, no, he's not a Goy. No. Is an uncircumcised Jew a Goy? No, he's a Jew.
So, but you said he's allowed to have benefit from them.
Yes, because his neder was that he is not going to get benefit from Arelim. What that word meant, even though it technically means uncircumcised, what he meant by that is Goyim, which means he cannot get benefit from Goyim, which means he can get benefit from all Jews, even though he is uncircumcised. You follow?
I got you.
You got me.
I
know, I had to just...
Uncircumcised means Goyim.
No. I
pretty much
misunderstood the
I
statement.
can only benefit from big nose.
Guys, I digress. Look at the Gemara on 2nd Nadarim, page 30. Over there it gives you examples, okay? Yeah. So last paragraph over here, the Maharal says that the Chachamim always speak in essence. So Tur Malka's essence, this place, King's Mountain that we keep talking about, its essence was the concept of multiplicity. Remember, it had the baracha of rov, of a lot. That's why so many people over there. We spoke about that in previous lectures in this section. In this chapter. And that is what our Gemara refers to when reporting its numbers. The numbers are not technical, rather conceptual. Right? The Tzedukhi in our Gemara, who was asking questions to Rabbi Chanina, he asked a technical question, claiming that the report of the sages was technically inaccurate, that it couldn't have been that this place had 600,000 cities with 600,000 people in each city. It's impossible. It's technical reality, empirical data question, right? But Rabbi Chanina answered him with the fact that the land is called Eretz Tzvi, the land of the supernatural essence. That's the definition he wants to give to the word Tzvi, glorious beyond the natural limits. Meaning that the Chachamim's report was not meant to be taken literally, is not meant to be about technical numbers, but rather about the intangible essence of the land. That's what they were talking about when they talked about those numbers. And that's what Rabbi Chanina meant when he answered the Tzedukhi. So that is the commentary on this section. Now I'm debating whether we should start the Chatzar Yosef or not.
We're here already.
No, we got 15 minutes.
You want to keep going?
Yeah.
15 minutes.
I'm not going to finish it today. It's going to be a two-part thing anyway.
We're not gonna finish it.
Okay, let's just do a little bit. Be'ezrat Hashem. Chatzar Yosef. What I like to do is I like to investigate words, because words are what house the meanings of everything in life, especially Hebrew words, the words in the Torah. So what we're going to do first in the Chatzar Yosef journey here is to investigate the meaning of the word tzvi, which just means gazelle or deer on the simple level, but we're going to delve a little deeper. Let us apply the principle of looking at the first time the word tzvi appears in the Torah to get a better sense of the word's nucleus, if you will. The words have nuclei, or is that just cells?
No, they do.
They have nuclei. Okay.
We call them the root.
Sure, the root. So, the first place the Torah uses the word tzvi, according to my research, was in the end of the Torah.
The end?
Yes. The book of Devarim, the fifth book of the Torah, 12:15. Here's the verse. I'll just read it in English. But whenever you desire, you may eat meat, according to the blessing that Hashem your God gave you, in all your gates. The impure and the pure may eat the meat together. It's talking about meat that's not sacrificially holy, that doesn't have to be eaten by Kohen, it doesn't have to be eaten in purity. It's talking about chulin, okay? And the term the Torah uses about such meat that can be eaten together, anyone who wants to eat it, is like the gazelle and like the deer. Katzevi v'cha ayal. Ayal can also mean a deer, it can mean a ram. Two kosher animals, basically, pretty much. Two wild kosher animals. So that's what the Torah says. That's the first time this uses the word tzvi in the Torah. Kind of a weird place to put it.
And ka, why explain like?
Like the deer and like the gazelle. Like the gazelle, like the deer. Like the tzvi and like the...
Does it mean that those two animals forage in the land of Israel and eat anywhere? Is that what it's trying to say?
Let's see. This section of the Torah discusses the laws of eating sacrificial meats in the appropriate place and at their respective designated times. There's a lot of laws about sacrifices, the meat, who can eat it, when they can eat it, with what they can eat it. A lot of laws, right? The whole section in the Mishnah talks about that. I don't want to get into that now, but this verse is talking about that. There are many different types of offerings, each with a unique purpose and each with specific parameters as to where and when they may be eaten. Look at note number 1. Some sacrificial meats have a 1-night limit, some 1-day limit, some 2 days. Some must be eaten only on certain temple grounds, some within the walls of Yerushalayim, and some anywhere. Go over there. Look in the Mishnah to learn more about that. This verse refers specifically to animals that have acquired a status of holiness by being designated for sacrifice, and then acquired a blemish, invalidating them from sacrifice. So if you had a lamb, you said, I want to give this lamb as a sacrifice to God, and you said, this is going to be a nedava, it's going to be a thanksgiving, a gift offering to God.
And upon examination, they find...
And then something happened to the lamb where it had a certain blemish on its body that disqualifies it from being a proper sacrifice. Now there's laws about what this thing, you can't just remove the holiness off of it. So this verse allows such animals to be used for consumption, and the Torah allows you to eat it without any time or spatial limits, and even someone who is ritually impure, who's tameh, may partake of it from the same plate together with someone who is ritually pure. That's what the Torah says. You can share it. You can eat it together.
The same plate, and then doesn't the other person become impure because he's touching this?
Depends how. Not necessarily. Depends, because it depends what level of tum'ah. There's a second, first level. I don't want to get into very convoluted. But the idea is there's no special requirements for this meat to be eaten now in a special way. The end of the verse says the following to express this idea. Like a gazelle, like a tzvi. It equates the subject of the verse, in other words, invalidated sacrificial meat. That's the subject of the verse. Invalidated sacrificial meat. It equates that to the meat of a gazelle or a deer. It doesn't mean like the deer and a gazelle eat together. It means like the meat of a gazelle or the meat of a deer. That it can be eaten without any special laws, unlike the meat of, let's say, a lamb or a cow that was designated for sacrifice, right? And as in so much as both may be eaten whenever, wherever, without any restrictions. The deer and the gazelle. Those are kosher animals. Those meats can be eaten whenever, wherever, however. Why?
What would be?
Because those animals are not offered.
Usually.
Ever.
The
Torah never requires you to offer a deer.
Or a gazelle.
Or a gazelle. Or wild animals. Only domesticated animals.
Okay. That makes sense then.
Okay? So the sacrificial meat, precisely because it became invalidated,
becomes like a wild animal.
and the meat of the gazelle or the deer, because meat of wild animals is never offered on the altar. So it's equal in that sense. They become the same level. So you can eat it however, whenever you want now. Right? Only domesticated kosher animals that may be offered. That's the law. So that's the context in which the Torah introduces the word tzvi to you. Gazelle, deer. So non-domesticated animals, right, wild animals like gazelle or deer, are not eligible to even be sacrificed in the first place. So once sacrificial meats become invalidated for offering, the verse is saying that one may treat the meat as he would treat the meat of a gazelle or a deer. Good. So now one more paragraph and then we can call it a day. The depth of our Gemara is beginning to surface now that we did that investigation. The land of Israel is referred to as Eretz Tzvi in the book of Jeremiah. Land of the gazelle, because just as the consumption of a gazelle's meat is not limited by time or space, right? Unlike sacrificial meat, there's a certain place where you have to eat it, certain time when you could eat it. So too, it's not true by this meat, so true, So too, the land of Israel, in a deep sense, is not limited by time nor space. That's what it means, Eretz Tzvi, land of the Gazelle. The secret here is that the beginning point of a given process, any process that you can think of, it does not follow the rules of the fully developed form of that process. Is that what I just said? Should I say it again? I'll say it again. The beginning point of any given process does not follow the rules of the fully developed form of that process. In other words,
How do we come to that conclusion?
Watch,
so that
watch.
It doesn't follow rules.
look, I'll explain. I'll give you an example. The normally observed rules do not become normally observed rules until the process matures and develops. The energy needed to start something is a different type than the energy needed to maintain it.
True.
Okay? For example, an infant, child, baby, develops physically and cognitively exponentially faster than it will when it becomes a fully grown adult. You understand? Another example, it takes very different means to start a business from scratch than to maintain it once it's up and running. Different energies, different things. In the same way, the physical universe's starting point is at the location where the temple stood. From there, from the point where the temple stood in Israel, that's where God expanded the rest of earth. That's from the Midrashim. That is the place where the upper world meets and injects its influence into the lower world. It is the juncture where the processes of space and time begin. Space and time is what we experience in our existence, in our life. And where does that idea and energy of space and time begin? From that point of the Bet HaMikdash, where it stood. Which then spreads throughout the rest of the universe.
So basically,
It's also the place where Adam was created from.
when they said that Israel expands when the Jews occupy it,
Because
it's talking about the universe.
exactly, and it's
So
talking how time and space doesn't function the same in Eretz Israel. I mean, and from that point specifically, and as you expand out of Eretz Israel, less so, but still so, until you get to the borders. Because it is where space and time first begin to take form. The properties of space and time, therefore, over there are not what is observed everywhere else in the world. That place is not limited by space and time. This supernatural effect had tiers within the land. The closer one moves towards the center, the temple, and then the Holy of Holies, the more this effect was amplified. Right? So the highest level where space and time are like bent and just not really working, as you expected, is the Holy of Holies. Little less so, the rest of the Bet HaMikdash. Little less so, the rest of the temple. Little less so, the rest of Jerusalem. Little less so, the rest of Eretz Israel. Tiers, okay? And by the way, you're looking at me funny. But if you look, there's so many examples throughout the Torah. Look at all the laws of the Torah explains the dimensions of the furniture, the ark that was in the Holy of Holies. It didn't fit. It's not supposed to fit in the chamber that was subscribed to. All the dimensions there are off. It shouldn't be able to fit there. But nevertheless, the Kohen Gadol walked in there every day. And every day. Once a year, on Yom Kippur. And there was a space. And you have to look. There's so many sources. Hopefully I'll bring some of them here. Look over here. Pirkei Avot 5:5 lists 10 miracles that occurred in the first temple, first Bet HaMikdash, on a daily basis. One of which was that the following. It says, they stand crowded, yet they bow with expanse. Which means, when you came to the Bet HaMikdash, they all stood like sardines. But when they bowed to Hashem, all of a sudden there was so much space. Space and time working differently. And during the pilgrimage festivals, 3 times a year, when millions of people are reported to Jerusalem, it says a person never said to his friend, the space is too confined for me to lodge in Jerusalem. I'm not coming this year, there's no space. No one ever said that. Millions of people coming 3 times a year to the same small place. No one ever said there's no space for us. A mother's home is never too small to board all of her children. That's from a lot of this is from Rabbi Tat's book World Mask.
This paragraph is just
What's the problem?
me personally. Trying to connect it all. I feel like it's. I get the infant analogy. I get the beginning point of any given process does not follow the rules of the fully developed form of that process.
Yeah.
Individually, I get all of these. Combining them, I don't know.
So-
some of them, I just
So where does the process? So same principle. Where does the process of existence start? There,
where?
Holy of Holies, Jerusalem.
Where's the process of existence start?
Yes, that's where it expanded.
Where everything started.
Yes, that's where space and time.
When it was built.
Space and time started there.
Hashem created the world.
Yeah.
That was the point where it started off.
Not Beta English?
From that area where it descended, the Makor.
Okay.
God created space and time.
From that area.
From that era, expanded to the rest of the universe. So that's the beginning of the process there. The rest, where we live, is the process already maintaining and functioning.
You know, the scientists
Space and
are
time.
saying that universe is expanding. This is what it's meaning, I guess.
So why doesn't Eretz Tzvi follow the rules of the rest of the world?
Because
How does that happen?
that's where space and time started.
So how do you explain that? How do you explain your sentence at any given point of the beginning? Like, how do you explain that in the analogy you're giving with Eretz Yisrael? How do you plug that sentence into?
Okay. Imagine a bubble.
I understand.
Imagine a bubble.
Okay.
When you blow the bubble, okay, it starts at a certain point. Then as it expands, you don't notice the whole bubble anymore. If it expands and you're inside this bubble somewhere, all you see is space around you. But if you were in the beginning of the process, you see the entire bubble around you. Right? So, Kiviyachol, God created the space and time bubble from there. And then the rest of the units expanded. So everywhere else we're seeing space and time work the way it works. But over there, it's much more flexible. It's much looser. It's much more, it starts there. The beginning of the process. The beginning of the process is there.
What makes it more loose? Define the term. Like, what makes it more loose? What makes it more?
Because
What?
what
What?
he's
Like,
trying to...
I'm trying to physically.
The fact that it's a beginning. The fact that it's the start of where everything else.
But the analogies you bring it makes sense. An infant versus a fully developed. That makes sense. A fully developed. An infant, you can impart a lot more information than an adult. That makes sense. How is Israel?
Okay, I'll tell you. Again, the general principle is any process, before the rules of that process, how it functions, get established,
Yeah.
the first second it's in existence, there are no rules.
No, and not...
They're not established yet.
How do we establish
You get it?
rules? By observation.
How can I explain? You get it.
I got it.
How can I get out? The laws of physics didn't establish yet fully.
But now they're
There.
established.
Now they're
But now they're
established. Yes.
Everywhere else. But over there, there's still semblances of it being the beginning of the process, and so
Not
it's.
only that, not only beginning of the
can't
process,
explain. I don't know. I
being
understand
the
any better.
Makor, the origination point. This is from where it's starting and continuing. It didn't stop. It's continuing.
Yes.
That's the most important thing, that it's continuing.
Yeah, so let's stop here. Next week, we're going to finish this whole thing about space-time, and hopefully we'll be able to explain it better. Baruch Adonai Olam, Amen, Amen.